The NFL Draft Week is here, and we are joined on BuckeyesNow on Sports Illustrated by former NFL and college head coach Jim Mora Jr. as several Ohio State Buckeyes hope that this is going to be a very memorable couple of days for them coming up. The NFL Draft in Cleveland. Jim, I know this is certainly a fun time of year. There's lots of prognostications thrown out there. All of the evaluations are pretty much done. I would imagine that from an NFL perspective, there's probably a lot of take a deep breaths, go over your final notes, and try to execute whatever draft night has to throw at you. As it pertains to Ohio State quarterback Justin Fields, there are a lot of things I think a lot of people want to know. Where is he going to end up? Obviously, is one question. The fact of the matter is Justin Fields has certainly been one of the most talked about players in this NFL draft. Today, the San Francisco 49ers have had an awful lot of buzz at number 3 about what their quarterback situation is going to look like going forward. So specifically to Fields and San Francisco, do you think that could be a good fit for him? And if not, where do you think Justin might end up?
Well, I think really any team's a good fit, but I do like the fit at San Francisco because I think Justin's able to execute the kind of plays with movement that Kyle Shanahan likes. You know, some of the bootleg stuff, moving the pocket things that they do. Yeah, but I just think Justin's special and really would fit anywhere. You know, I don't think there's anything that he can't do and can't do at a high level. And you and I have talked about him several times. And, you know, the thing that I always go back to is he's a winner. I mean, the guy wins football games. And sure, people help him win football games. But, you know, it's the quarterback that gets most of the credit. And he also gets most of the blame when things don't go well. And I think Justin does a great job of handling both sides of the pendulum equally well. I love his decision-making. I think it's evidenced by the fact that his touchdown interception ratio is what it is. I love that he's played in big games and in big stadiums against great competition where the stakes are high and had success. You know, a lot of times I'll judge a kid just off his demeanor. I love his demeanor as a leader, as a tough guy. And then I just love his versatility as a quarterback, his ability to throw from the pocket, throw from outside the pocket, remain a passing threat as he moves out of the pocket, draws the defense up, thinking he's going to run, throws it over the top, or if they stay back, is able to go get yards running the ball. I love his physical stature, and I guess really, you know, if there was a critique, it wouldn't even be a critique; it would just be an observation. Is that maybe his motion and the way the ball comes out of his hand isn't as smooth as some of the other guys. But, I mean, that's, to me, he still throws a great ball. So I'll be excited to see where he goes. You know, I'm hoping that it's a place where they'll really spend the time to develop him that's necessary. I think like any young quarterback could benefit from sitting behind someone for a little while. I think if San Francisco doesn't trade Garoppolo, it's just an amazing situation for Justin to find himself in.
From an NFL perspective, when Justin revealed last week through the media, and I don't know if it was specifically from him and leaked or how this was coordinated, but it came out last week that NFL teams have been made aware that Justin has been dealing with epilepsy, something in his family, something that doctors say he's going to grow out of. From an NFL perspective, when you're looking at a guy and you're evaluating a guy, I'm not asking you to go specifically into Justin's case here. That's not fair. But give us an idea of the depth of information that's available when you're talking about medical records for players and how that part of the evaluation process is, I assume, front and center.
Well, teams are going to want to get to the bottom of it. You know, I mean, it's easy to say that he'll grow out of it, but we don't know that that's the case. You know, and I have, not myself, but my goddaughter, who's the same age as Justin's, been told for years she was going to grow out of it, and she still hasn't grown out of it. She's a senior in college, didn't redshirt. But, you know, when you're making this big of an investment, you need the information. And I think that because of the stakes being what they are, that Justin would release any medical information that was available to teams so that they could evaluate it. I know teams get really antsy this time of the year, this close to the draft, when they don't have a lot of time to evaluate information. I've seen it with my players in the past firsthand, where some negative information comes out about a medical condition, and then you start to fall in the draft. But I think with Justin in particular, he's shown so much on the field. He's handled the pressure so well. This is something that they can control, that they will control. We haven't seen it be an issue for him. I'm sure that the scouts have gone back, the coaches have gone back, the evaluators and the decision makers have gone back and talked to everybody they could talk to. And I'm just really hopeful that it doesn't affect his status in this draft. I think he deserves better than that. I really believe he does. If it does affect his status in the draft, then he's going to carry a big old chip on his shoulder. And there's a whole lot of teams that don't pick him that better watch out.
Well, I know Ryan Day certainly shares your sentiments. He echoed that in a tweet the same day that news came out. Hey, let's shift to Pete Werner here for a minute. Boy, if there's a linebacker that the Buckeyes certainly are going to miss this year, I know they had 4 really good ones last year that are all draft eligible, but Pete Werner has gotten a lot of attention lately, and in some cases, he has been discussed as perhaps a late first-round pick. That's kind of the first time we've really started to hear those kinds of rumblings. Obviously, we'll find out on Thursday night if that's a reality, but when you see Pete Werner, give us an idea if there is a certain scheme that you think he fits really well in the NFL and why you think he can be a good professional player.
Well, I mean, I know he's going to be a really good player. I think it's a stretch to think he's going to go in the first round. I don't see that happening. But, hey, listen, if you get drafted at all, that's a big deal. But I think he's got tons of versatility. I think he's got tons of potential. Once again, when you come out of Ohio State, you're ready for the league. You've been well coached. You've played against great competition. I think, in the old days, he'd have been a Sam linebacker, like a strong side, outside linebacker in a 4-3 scheme in an underfront where you kind of play over a tight end. And I see him kind of fitting in that scheme as well, because I think he can slide out and cover in space. I think he's got good coverage ability. I think he's got good athleticism. I think he can set the edge. I think that the negatives or the questions, I don't want to use the word negative, but the questions are a little bit narrow frame, lower body, knee bending, and be able to just punch people and get off blocks. But I think his athleticism, his versatility, who he was coached by, the games he played in, who he played for, the success he had, all bode well for him. And I think there's a potential he could even be a 3-4 outside linebacker. But I think right now teams are looking for guys that have some versatility, that can cover in space, that can match up underneath the tight ends. And I think he can do all of those things. He's going to be a really good player in the NFL. It's just a matter of, who takes him, where they take him, and then just let him do his thing, have a plan for him. But he's going to be a great player. Listen, there's a lot of Ohio State guys that I could sit there and say the same thing about. Going to be a great player, going to be a great player, going to be a great player. That's just the program that they've built there.
I want to ask you one more question that hopefully will be a little bit more fun. Not that wasn't. Look, so spring practice is over. Obviously, recruiting is 24/7, 365. It never really stops. But this is a time of year now where I would assume you're far enough away from the upcoming season that you feel like maybe you can catch your breath a little bit as a college head coach. When it comes to watching the draft, I know you've been on both the NFL and the college side of this. The NFL side, it's obviously a super busy week. If you're a college head coach this week, what's life like for you?
Well, you're excited for the guys that you've coached, and you're anxious to see where they go. And, I've been at the draft in person. If you have first-round picks, a lot of times you're there with them. So, and I don't know if Ryan's going to be there or not. Things have changed so dramatically. But regardless, you're excited for the guys that you coach. You're excited to see where they go. You're excited to see them realize their dream. You're, from a business standpoint, you're excited to see the Ohio State emblem, on the television set on a Thursday or Friday or Saturday when guys are getting drafted, because recruits are watching that. So every time a guy from Ohio State's drafted, it represents your program, what you're all about, and it's another feather in your cap. But really, there was no comparison being a head coach in the NFL in the draft room and being a head coach in college football, watching the draft with your players. One was business and one was emotional. I remember my first year at UCLA, and we had a young man named Dayton Jones who grew up here in LA, defensive lineman, grew up in not a great neighborhood, was told his whole life he wouldn't make it, was told he wouldn't succeed at UCLA. Remember, he came into my office before the draft and he had his diploma. He'd graduated early. He'd walked. And I'm sitting in my house with my kids, and we didn't expect him to be drafted in the first round. His name was Dayton Jones, and I believe it was with the 27th or 28th pick. The Green Bay Packers select UCLA defensive end Dayton Jones. And I mean, I was, goosebumps, choked up. I don't remember if there was tears, but that feeling you get when you're just so excited. And that feeling doesn't go away. And I still have it. I have guys that I recruited that are in the draft this year: Jalen Phillips, Demetric Felton, some guys that Oso Digizua, some guys that are going to go, in this draft. Jalen will be a first-round pick. And I still feel that, man. I still feel it. So I get excited for all the players. I get excited for the coaches that are seeing the players they, had a hand in helping get to this point, succeed and reach their goals. It's pretty dang awesome. I can tell you that.
Well, certainly figures like it'll be a special week. And I know there are double-digit number of Buckeyes that are hoping to hear their names called over the course of Thursday, Friday, and Saturday in Cleveland. Jim, appreciate your time and your insight. Enjoy the draft.
All right, Brendan, take care.